With the prospect of returning to the National League firmly on their minds, Newcastle Ostrows were looking to 1989 as the year that they would press for re-inclusion in the big time, and their pre-season form indicated that they were on the right track by making the semi-finals of the Cup. But then the wheels fell off. On Saturday at home, Ostrows were soundly beaten by Avala 2-0, and for captain David Jones, the start to the season can't get any worse.
A 1 point out of 8 is not a very good start. Last year we only took 3 points out of the first 12. We're notably slow starters, but we're not playing very well at the moment. Last year we did really well, and everyone was praising the players, and Willie Gallagher got no praise. At the moment, I suppose, the knives are out for Willie, but it's up to the players to put things right. It's only the players who can do it on the field, not Willie. Willie can only coach us on Monday, Tuesday and Friday. It's up to us on the Saturday.
And what about the added responsibility of being captain?
Yeah, I am actually. 1 point out of 8 is not a great start when you just started off as captain in Newcastle. And I take a bit of the responsibility to be on the pitch for things not going right as well.
The position doesn't come easier for Ostrows this weekend as they clash with the informed Sutherland at home on Sunday.
It'll be a hard game this week. They're going well. They've won 4 out of 5, I think. Had a good win yesterday, 2-0 against Canberra. So yeah, it'll be a really hard game.
In the first set, this is basically how the thing went. It was baseline to baseline. Graf with the patented forehand coming up for the winner. Steffi would win the first set 6-3. But in the second, Sabatini is coming on strong. Watch as she will come to the net in the far court. Gabby with the outstanding athletic moves between the legs there. Sabatini with the cross-court winner finally. She wins the second set 6-3, and that would bode well for Gabby's chances. In the third, Sabatini to the net. The nice little drop shot for the winner. She wins it 3-6, 6-3, and 7-5.
Although the International Game Fishing Association has to verify the claim, it looks like Leanne Greaves has snagged herself quite a few records. The most impressive being that this 548-kilogram tiger shark is the biggest ever caught by a female on a 15-kilogram line. But the list doesn't stop there. Measuring 3.8 metres and 1.9 metres around the girth, it's the largest fish ever weighed at Swansea and the second largest ever caught by a female in Australia. Leanne was fishing with her father and friends about 50 kilometres off Swansea when she felt a bite. She fought her catch for just over an hour before it was finally reeled into the boat. But it wasn't until she got back to Swansea that she realised just how big it was.
I was hoping every time I sort of catch a fish I hope, but you don't know until you actually get the fish to the boat. And then when we got the fish to the boat we sort of thought, oh yeah, it's a nice sized fish, but we weren't sure how big it would actually go. So when we actually got it back here and weighed it, we were all got a bit of a surprise.
For some, just the sight of this monster would be enough. But for Leanne, this shark is only just the beginning.
Hopefully to a 1,000-pound marlin, then after that a 1,000-pound tuna, hopefully. That's my 3 ambitions, so I've got 1 out of the way, so I've got 2 to go.
Special guest at a lunch for Newcastle's Chamber of Commerce, John Stone was kept busy throughout the morning answering questions dealing with the economic needs of Newcastle. But he quickly switched his attention to Canberra when the balance of payments details were handed to him, smugly declaring them a complete disaster.
I think they were even worse than I expected. I expected them to be bad, but I didn't really expect them to be as bad as they are.
And the most damaging repercussion, Senator Stone sees renewed pressure on inflation.
This must put further upward pressure on interest rates, also some downward pressure on the exchange rate. In particular, I think this must make it much more likely, even than it already was, that housing loan interest rates are going to rise further.
As for belief that such a damaging result must surely put paid to thought of an early election, Senator Stone wasn't quite so sure.
You could argue that it would, because it's more likely to push up interest rates, which won't make the government any more popular. On the other hand, I have to say I think that whenever the government goes to the elections, they're going to get beaten. And on one view of the matter, they might be advised to go quickly and get beaten less badly than if they go later.
The Restaurant and Catering Association invited Beverly Hills restaurateur Joe Patty to the launch of the second stage of its campaign against smoking bans in restaurants. Joe Patty described the problems he had encountered when such a ban was implemented there in 1986. What happened to customers in the Beverly Hills area when the ordinance was introduced there?
They left. They were gone to other areas where they were able to smoke.
Financially, what sort of effect did that have?
Financial, myself, I lost 20% of my business. Some other restaurants, they lost even more. I had to close up for my lunch business because of, if you invite someone that it is your guest, you don't ask him or her if they smoke.
Once customers are lost, he says, they never come back, and implementing the ban created problems, especially with regular customers.
I've been in business for 15 years, and it was rather ridiculous to tell my customers that they cannot smoke. Dean Martin comes to my restaurant every night, and I couldn't say, I'm sorry, you can smoke in here.
Now in Beverly Hills, he says the ban has been lifted and restaurants are divided into smoking and non-smoking sections. The Restaurant and Catering Association is pushing for self-regulation of restaurants, enabling owners to choose how they cater for smoking and non-smoking customers. Today, the association launched a book designed to help restaurateurs decide what to do. The book looks at accommodating diverse needs, legislation versus proprietors' rights and air quality. A report on whether or not a ban could be implemented will be presented to the Newcastle City Council on the 9th of next month.
I believe that there may be a recommendation which says that there can be, restaurants can opt to decide whether they're going to be smoking or non-smoking, but it's a question of whether that can be enforced, who's going to enforce it and who's going to pay the cost of enforcing it.
When Pepper's Guest House was sold for $10 million, the vendors were under strict orders not to say who had bought it. But it's now reported Japanese popular singer Masao Sen is the owner of the Hunter Valley property. Sen has been described as the Japanese equivalent of Spanish heartthrob Julio Iglesias. Merajade Proprietary Limited made the purchase in October, and today it was confirmed Sen has a controlling interest in the company that owns Merajade. Pepper's new owner has already visited the Hunter, and representatives of his company regularly visit Australia to investigate further investment opportunities. The Peppers Group says there are no plans to change guest house operations. However, additional tennis and swimming facilities are expected to be built at a cost of around $60,000. Meanwhile, the Cessnock City Council is tonight considering an application from another company, TrueTet, to develop a $16 million resort opposite the Cessnock Airport. The 50-hectare site would include a golf club, country club and a motel and a restaurant.
Detectives were still receiving phone calls this morning from members of the public anxious to help solve the attacks reenacted on NBN News last night. Detective Sergeant Phil Miles says more than 40 calls have been logged.
We've had an overwhelming response so far from the people in the community, and at this stage we're acting on the information that we've received.
Is it possible this could lead to an arrest?
There's every chance it could do, but at this stage, until we check all the information that we do have, I can't really say.
Police say they're encouraged by community interest in the crimes, and they say they're ready to take any further information members of the public might have relating to the attacks.
Hunter Occupational Health consists of representatives from trade unions and local businesses and is a division of the University of Newcastle Research Association, or TUNRA. It is the first time a service independent of major industry or government has been set up in the Hunter to deal with health in the workplace.
We live in an industrial town and we're very proud of it, but industrial technology has a downside. And we, as a community, have a duty to maintain and protect the health of the people who work in it. And I don't just mean blast furnace men, I mean keyboard operators and all people.
The combination of science and medicine is an important aspect of the organisation.
We have two areas of problems. The first are worksite assessments. Someone wants to know how many asbestos fibres are there floating around in their workplace. Are there any PCBs floating around in the air? And we can measure these. The second kind of problem is, do these things do us any harm? And this is where the doctor input comes in. Do these measurements have any health impact? Are they real in terms of people's health?
The team also anticipates a number of workers' compensation claims.
Sometimes it's a question, sometimes the legal questions come up. If a person has an illness, say cancer or something, we would be prepared to offer an opinion, we think expert, on how likely it is that this cancer, that this problem could have been related to work. Sometimes it's not. Very often it is. And the purpose there, I think, is to ensure, not just to get money for people, but to ensure justice. If people have suffered, they, in all justice, should be compensated.
It came down to two players today, Trevor Wood from the Lakes Club in Sydney off a 3 handicap and 68-year-old Keith Pepper from Wollongong off 2. Both players turned all square after 9 holes, and it wasn't until the 12th that Pepper finally got his nose in front. On the 13th, Wood had this little tiddler to get back to square, but couldn't make the putt. That may have sapped a bit of his confidence, and as a result, Pepper made him pay for his costly error by sinking a putt on 14 to go 2 up in the final. Both players made par on the 15th hole, and after Wood and Pepper had made good recovery shots on 16, Pepper had this putt for the title, but a tentative prod wasn't what he needed, and the match was still alive. 2 superb drives on 17 saw both men in good position to get close to the green on the tough par 4, and they did that. Knocked their third shots on, and again Pepper had a chance to wrap up the crown, but missed his putt. Wood had a 6-footer to keep the match alive, couldn't convert, and Pepper had the simplest of tap-ins to take his second Australian Amateur Senior title. It took a while for the players to settle down in the first quarter, and when they did, both sides produced some exciting basketball. The Bullets made the early pace, and it was obvious from the outset that their new import from the Phoenix Suns, Winston Strait, was to have a huge impact on the game. Strait made all the scoring moves in the first half, and he was ably supported by big centre John Dodge. At quarter time, the Bullets led by 5, but then the Falcons, with Jerry Everett and Michael Johnson starting to fire, hit back, and the Falcons went to the long break leading 53-51. With both coaches swinging many changes to their teams during the third term, neither side could get a clear upper hand, with again Strait and Leroy Loggins doing the damage for Brisbane and Everett and Johnson powering for the Falcons. The Bullets led by 1 point at the third break, and the lead seesawed for 5 minutes in the final quarter, but then Ronnie Radliff hit his straps for the Bullets and the game was as good as over. Radliff helped Brisbane to stretch their lead to 18 points, and from there the Falcons couldn't come back. Although going down by 16 points, it was a heartening performance by the Falcons, and the Brisbane Bullets proved that they are going to be very hard to stop in this year's competition.
The Scotsman was brought out to Australia for last year's bicentenary celebrations from England and is now touring country New South Wales, participating in festivals like today's. The highly polished 3112 and 3801 are now based in Sydney and delighted today's large crowds. Elderly residents and smaller admirers stood in awe of the machines from yesteryear, reminiscing or just dreaming of being a real-life Casey Jones. The festival features not only rail but steam engines that were once used in homes as early as 1898. The festival continues tomorrow when the 3801 will race a Tiger Moth plane from Sandgate to High Street, Maitland. 154 bullocks today lined up at the Cessnock Showground to break the record set at the same grounds in 1984 with 128 bullocks. The beasts are still used to haul timber through the Hunter Valley, as their ancestors did at the turn of the century. Each weighs an average of 800 kilograms, making an accrued weight of 12,320 kilos for the train. The enormous weight of the team required a semi-trailer to hold the strain and stop the bullocks from bolting. The same couldn't be said for this spectator, that found the excitement all too much. Once all the bullocks linked up, they made a chain stretching more than 200 metres. All proceeds raised from the Guinness Book of Records attempt will be donated to the Angel One appeal to buy a new rescue helicopter for the region.
It rained field goals from Western Division in the first couple of minutes and they led 2-0. It was the visitors who put the opening try on the board as well, but it was a dreadful Newcastle mistake that allowed Western, through Roger Smith, to make the touchdown and lead at half-time 8-2. With the addition of 2 penalty goals, Western extended their lead, but Newcastle forced the error and it was replacement Alan Williams who crossed for the locals. Soon after, Western shut the gate on Newcastle when fullback Rod Frail juggled, went through the non-existent defence to score, and in the space of a few minutes Tony Pascoe wrapped it up after Smith swooped on a loose ball, made the break, offloaded to Pascoe, who sprinted to the line and scored and helped Western Division to the final.
The streets of Maitland were bustling as young and old turned out for the final day of Steamfest and Heritage Week. Away from the railway station platforms, the famous Church Street Fair provided plenty to see and do. While the cloudy skies might have put a damper on some plans, organisers say 60,000 people enjoyed the weekend of railway nostalgia.
I think it turns adults into children. It's amazing on the train to see people lose 20, 30 years off their age and start behaving like children. There's just something warm and nostalgic about trains that appeals to everyone.
The highlight of the weekend was the rematch race between the 3801 and a vintage Tiger Moth plane, with the Tiger Moth aiming to even the score following the Locos win in 1987. The contenders set out from Newcastle for an official running start from Sandgate. The steam train averaged 115 kilometres an hour. Overhead in the Tiger Moth, local government minister David Hay was an unlikely co-pilot. For those waiting for the end of the journey at Maitland Station, the aircraft was the first to come into view, but the whistle-blowing 3801 wasn't far behind. Later, saying the finishing line had in fact been back up the track, race judge and Maitland Mayor Peter Blackmore announced the popular victor.
The winner of the great race was the 3801.
3801's Alan Lee accepted the winner's wreath and cup, while the Royal Newcastle Aero Club's Gary Watson received a bottle of champagne for the Tiger Moth's efforts.
Knights coach Alan McMahon must have a friend in heaven, as each home game for the side so far has resulted in wins on wet tracks, and today's match was waterlogged, so it was no surprise to see the tough encounter played in the forwards. The Knights pressed the Bears' line, and in the 20th minute it was great thinking by Tony Kemp that led to their first try.
Peter Johnson now back inside to Tony Kemp. Tony Kemp is only brought down 2 metres outside. Great play there by Peter Johnson. Robbie McCormack. Kemp toes the ball through, dives on it under the post, and the Knights score the first try here at the International Sports Centre.
Leading 6-0 just before half-time and doing it easily, the Knights suffered a huge body shot as in-form Robbie McCormack took the ball up but went under the tackle and turned his leg. He was carried from the field with a suspected broken ankle. It wasn't long after resumption that Gary Worth stretched the Knights' lead by notching his 4th try of the season.
That's the way to go in these conditions. Up inside the 10 metres of the Knights. Fulmer now with the ball. Out to Goulding. Goulding close to the line. Can't get it away. Yes, he has got it away now to Gary Worth. Gary Worth scores! Gary Worth is in for the Knights. And they stretch
The only glimmer of hope that Norths had was snuffed out by referee Chris Ward when he ruled that Gale had bounced the ball over the line. That was North's last look in as Mark Sargent continually made breaks up the middle.
Cuts out one. Well picked up by the midfielder, Sargent. Sargent's made the break. He's up for the 22 now. Has he got the pace to go on with it? He's still going on, but can't unload the ball.
But in the end, it was the Knights who kept shaking the daylights out of the Bears as they steamrolled their way to the 12-0 victory.
Coughing it up. There's some strong.
Mr Laverick spoke out after Amicon announced in Canberra yesterday that it was proposing that 5 out of the 12 frigates would be built and launched in Newcastle, representing between $700 and $800 million worth of work.
Well, of course, they're trying to gain advantage by saying that it's better to build in Newcastle. I'm pleased that they are saying that because it is the best place to build them.
But by giving a vote of confidence like they have in Newcastle, are they saying that they can't manage the work overall?
I think that's one conclusion that can be drawn, yes.
Though Mr Laverick says Amicon is trying to attack its opponent's home base, he is confident Newcastle will not be fooled by expansive promises.
Well, it's an effort to try and influence the people in Newcastle that the best people to do it are Amicon.
And do you think that they are influencing people this way?
I very much doubt it. I think Newcastle is a lot smarter than that. It's a war, if you like, and one of the best strategies in war is to attack the enemy in his home base, and that's exactly what Amicon are doing.
Both contenders have to submit their final costings in May, and it's believed that costs of both submissions have escalated in price. Would subcontracting to Newcastle substantially increase costs for Amicon?
Unless the government stipulate that the ships be built in 2 cities, and that's probably one of the best strategic options, then I doubt that it will ever happen. So I doubt that it will increase the price.
And he says he is even more confident now that Newcastle will win the contract.
Actually, Rebecca, I'm more confident now than I've been for a long time. I'm very pleased the way the negotiations have been going in Canberra.
And why are you more confident now?
Just that the way we've been able to satisfactorily answer all the questions that have been asked about our offer, about the ships, about the way we would do it.
Holy Cross has produced some great players such as Ben Elias, Paul Sirinen, Scott Gale and Paul Bevan, and the latest crop of players took on the locals on a field that wasn't bad considering the rain of recent days. Neither side took a backward step in the opening 20 minutes, and it was St Peter's who scored first with a penalty conversion by Rick Ryan. St Peter's went further ahead from another penalty after Holy Cross were caught offside. But then the Sydney Siders hit back 3 minutes from half-time through a try to second rower Jason Shepherd. St Peter's were caught thin out wide, Holy Cross spread the ball and Shepherd barged over to make the score at half-time 4-all. One notable spectator at the match was Knights coach Alan McMahon, casting an eagle eye over the talent on display. Not long after the resumption, St Peter's Rick Ryan and Holy Cross's Matt Farley both received 10 minutes in the sin bin after coming to grips with each other. From the scrum that was put down after the dust-up, halfback Jamie Shepherd scooted around the unmanned blindside to score the easiest of tries for Holy Cross, the try that was to be the match winner. But the Blues never gave up. In the 20th minute of the second half, fullback James Love crossed for St Peter's to level the score at 8-all. They missed the conversion and Holy Cross were through to the quarterfinals of the Commonwealth Bank Cup.